The Mongol Empire is known today as one of the most bloodthirsty and violent empires to have ever reigned. But how true is that really? A study put on by the Carnegie Institute estimates that Ghengis Khan is responsible for reducing carbon emissions by as much as 700 million tons because of all the people that were killed under his reign. Trees and forests were able to grow over the destroyed cities. Welcome to Crazy Histories, where we bring you the craziest and weirdest facts from human history. Some of the things discussed in this video may be offensive or disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Who were the Mongols? The Mongol Empire was made up of several nomadic tribes in East Asia. In 1206, they were united by a council of tribal leaders, and Ghengis Khan was named the king of all Mongols and was the new leader of this new large empire. The beginning of the end for the empire began after Khan's death. As with many reigns, the issue of succession was a major issue. Khan's son and original heir died before Ghengis Khan did, so there was question of if the new ruler should follow that son's line or if it should go to one of Khan's other grandsons. The empire managed to hold together until 1368, when it was finally dissolved. Short as the reign of the Mongols may have been, they managed to conquer a massive swath of land. The Mongol Empire may have originated in modern-day Mongolia, but grew to span from the Sea of Japan and into Eastern Europe and from the Arctic down to India. Still to this day, it is the largest land empire throughout all of history. Military structure. The biggest asset that the Mongol Empire had was its rigid military structure. It was highly organized. Every man knew his direct superior and was close with their units. The military consisted of 10 men squads, 10 squads made up of a company of 100, 10 companies made a regiment of 1,000 men, and finally 10 regiments made up a division of 10,000. All able men between the ages of 15 and 60 were required to serve in the military in one capacity or another. Every man in the army went through a long and tough training. They were specifically trained on how to quickly and easily be on the move. They learned to fight from horseback and how to get resources from the land they were on. That last part was key to helping them stay mobile, as they didn't have to wait on a supply chain for their needs if they could live off the land. They just had to rely on themselves. Another key aspect of the Mongol military was their high level of planning. Before they made any move against an enemy, it was planned very heavily. Before every attack and siege, the military leaders would get together to discuss their best options. It wasn't just organization, though, that led to the Mongol takeover. They also had incredibly strict rules among the military. The harshness that the Mongols showed those that they conquered started within their own ranks. There were cruel penalties for the smallest of crimes. For instance, if a mounted soldier dropped something and then the man behind him didn't pick it up, the second man would likely face the death penalty. These punishments weren't limited to just the low-ranking men either. They applied to every single man in the army. The higher-ups were held to the same standards. They'd get the same punishment for the same crime. Their power didn't protect them. Slaughter and destruction. No matter where they were, the Mongol expansion came along with bloodshed and cruelty. They did not just kill people who were in their wake, they tortured and raped too. One eyewitness to the Mongol army said that the Mongols killed everybody regardless of gender or age, and that they especially found pleasure in humiliating women. The best bet for a city or town that the Mongolians came up on was to quickly surrender, but even that was no guarantee for safety. Resistance from even a few people in a town or city could ensure that the whole place would be razed to the ground and all the people killed. The bigger the resistance from a place, the harsher the Mongol punishment would be. The Mongols seemed to punish those that killed their leaders the most harshly of all. For example, during one campaign, one of Ghengis Khan's sons-in-law was killed. The entire city was killed in response, with the dead man's wife leading the charge. The heads of the dead were piled up and displayed. It is even said that the Mongols killed the cats, dogs, and livestock in the city as well. Nothing was left alive. The Mongols weren't satisfied with just killing people. They destroyed culture too. They would also destroy property and books and would burn the surrounding lands. It is said that when the Mongols made siege of Baghdad, that the Tigris River ran black for months from all the ink from books that were thrown in it. Another supposed eyewitness said that you could walk across the river on a bridge of books because there were so many. They so thoroughly destroyed irrigation systems in Iraq and Iran that they set the countries back by millennia. The lack of water then went on to cause a famine that may have killed more people than the invasion itself. Other times, the Mongols would burn the farmland that surrounded cities and towns they destroyed. That ensured that anyone that may have managed to survive the assault would die of starvation. There is also evidence to show that they took part in what may be the world's first case of biological warfare. It is said that they catapulted diseased corpses over the walls of cities they were besieging so that the people in the city would get sick and be easier to conquer. Some say that this is how the Black Death spread to Europe, but that's probably not true, though it is interesting to think about. The survivors. Although it may seem like it, the Mongols didn't kill for the sake of killing. After all, their goal was to have people to rule. You can't rule people if they're dead. The Mongols gave some places the option to pay a tribute to keep their people safe. Different cultures would have to give different types of tributes. They could range from clothing to food to raw resources. The fear that they instilled actually prevented them from killing even more people. Once their reputation for violence spread, more and more people were willing to comply and pay the steep tributes to avoid getting wiped out. In addition to tribute-paying places, individual artisans and craftsmen were also often spared, even in places that did rebel. The Mongols saved them so that they could take advantage of their skills for themselves. It was also common for men that weren't killed during large-scale massacres to be conscripted into the Mongol army and used as slaves, though that fate may have actually been worse than dying in a siege or assault. The Mongols also were somewhat lenient with different religions. They didn't outright kill others for their beliefs. That doesn't mean that they were particularly tolerant of religions different from their own, though. They didn't necessarily force people to convert, but they did outlaw certain practices. For example, Muslims and Jewish people were not allowed to butcher animals in ways that allowed them to properly follow their diets. Khan also forbade them from refusing to accept and eat food from others. This did change over time, though. Later in their reign, they were actually quite tolerant and eventually converted to the religions of where they conquered. The impact of the Mongols. The Mongols wanted to rule over a large group of people, yes, but they weren't opposed to slaughtering masses either. During the Mongol invasion of modern-day Russia, they wiped out nearly every major city. The Chinese population was cut in half in just 50 years under Mongol rule. Hungary also saw half of their people die during the Mongol invasion. The Iranian Peninsula also saw a huge decrease in people. It's estimated that anywhere between 10 and 15 million people died at the hands of the Mongols and the disease and famine they caused, and that the population didn't recover to pre-Mongol times until the mid-20th century. That's more than 600 years of impact. One researcher, R.J. Rummel, estimates that the Mongol Empire killed more than 30 million people during their reign. Other historians raise that number to as many as 80 million, but the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, around 50 million. Whatever the real number of deaths is, it had a huge impact on the global society. On the other hand, there have been studies that show that about 1 in 12 Asian men alive today share a common Y chromosome, one that can be traced to the time of Ghengis Khan. Do you think society today is still seeing the effects of Ghengis Khan and his empire? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more crazy history.